Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT Sentence Correction by focusing on meaning and logic. My name is Rajat Sadana. I am one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Along with me, I have Payal Tandon. Payal is the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she is going to be your main host today. To support us during this webinar, we also have Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert, and he'll make sure that all your questions get answered during this webinar. This is a fairly application-focused webinar. In this webinar, we will demonstrate how you can solve the easiest to the most challenging questions that GMAT will throw at you in sentence correction if you just focus on the intended meaning that the author is trying to communicate. So fairly application focused webinar, and to make sure that you're prepared for this, we did send some video lessons your way. If you've not gone through these video lessons, I do recommend that you go through them. They are a part of your free trial. We also have some upcoming free webinars. This, by the way, is the last verbal webinar for this year. We have a free Quant webinar tomorrow. In this webinar, we look at how you can solve the easiest to the most challenging number properties questions using a unified approach. If number properties is one area where you want to get to 90 percentile or higher, this webinar will help you get there. Then, our first webinar of 2019 would be a GMAT reading comprehension webinar. That would be 2 weeks from now. Again, both these webinars are open for registration. If you want to, you may register by clicking on the links below. This is a free webinar. It's quite heavily attended, and to make sure that we address the needs of this group as a whole, we ask a few leading questions. One is, when do you plan to take the test? The second one is, what is your target GMAT score? Let me put in the second question over here. Based on the data over here, what I really see is we have two similarly sized groups. One that haven't taken a date as of yet, and the other group that has upwards of 45 days before the GMAT. Other than that, we have three other similar sized, similar groups, those who have their GMAT right away, those who have between 16 and 30 days, and those who have between a month and 45 days before their exam. Okay, the good news is that if you follow this approach, even those who have 15 days would benefit greatly from it. With regards to the target GMAT score, what I really see is the biggest group, two big groups. One is the 710, 720, as well as the 730 to 750, account for about 66% of the participants. In addition, about 23% of you aim to score a 760 or higher. All right, with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. Okay, I'm going to wait for another few seconds so that the screen does settle down for pretty much everyone over here. All right. Let's move forward now. There's essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, I'm going to do a brief introduction to e-GMAT. That's going to be about 15 minutes. In the second part, Pal would take over and she'd focus on how you can master this unified approach, which focuses on meaning and logic. And in the end, if you still have questions that are not answered by the end of this webinar, we'll have an open-ended Q&A to address those questions. With that, let's go right into the first part, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. Now, I asked this question, how many of you want to score a 720 or higher? And I think upwards of 70% said that your target score is 720 or higher. So while more than 70% of the participants over here aim to get to that score, statistically, only 6% of the people who take the test score 720 or higher. And I can tell you that everyone over here is capable of getting to the score. The other piece which is there is the median GMAT scores at top B schools seem to be going up. It seems that GMAT is starting to become more and more important, or has become more and more important over the last few years at top B schools. This all of this data is from this year, and you can really look this data up if you Google it or you look at the link below. Now, what is it that those do who get to that 720 or higher score? A good percentage of them use e-GMAT. Why do I say that? If you look at some data on some of the world's top most forums, you're going to kind of agree with this. The first data point that I'll draw your attention to is the number of verified reviews. Verified reviews are reviews that have been posted on GMAT Clubs since October of 2015. So right about in the last three years, a few months or so. And when you look at those reviews, what you're going to find is there have been more reviews for e-GMAT than have been for any of the other top test prep companies. In fact, there have been more reviews for e-GMAT than have been for all of these top test prep companies combined. If you look at the number of success stories posted during this time, you're going to find a very similar story. More students mention e-GMAT, that e-GMAT has played a role in their success, than do mention all of these prep companies combined. Again, you can click on these links to see this data overall. So what makes our students more successful? One thing, there are many things, but one thing that does stand out is how we look at GMAT preparation, how we approach GMAT preparation, and the architecture of the learning correspondingly that we provide. So when you look at this, the thing that to look at is what are the different architectures of learning, and how is e-GMAT's architecture different from that provided by other prep companies. So when you look at various learning architectures that exist in the industry today, what you're going to find is that there are two predominant architectures that exist today. One is what we call as the book-based architecture, and the second is the private tutor-based architecture. Most prep companies that exist today follow this book-based architecture. Yes, they may have audio-visual lessons. Yes, they may have quizzing modules, but essentially the core structure that these modules, these video lessons are built around is this book-based approach. At e-GMAT, we believe on this private tutor-based approach where our technology works like a private tutor. Let's see how are these two approaches different and why is one approach more effective than the other to help you get to that 760 or 730 or 740 score. So let's see how do you get to that 720 score. So if you want to get to that 720 score or even higher, the first thing that you need to do is create an optimal path to getting to that score. Then you need to figure out the areas that you need to focus on and learn the concepts that you need to learn. Just learning concepts isn't sufficient. You need to be able to apply these concepts. And then you need to get so good at application that you are taking a level of mastery that you are amongst the top 5%, top 4%, or if you're aiming for a 760, top 1% of students who take the GMAT. So let's see how a book-based approach tackles these challenges. So let's start with the study plans. So in a book-based approach, it's all about autonomy, which means that when you start studying and take up a book and really say, how do I prepare for the test, they tell you little about how should you go about strategizing for the test. So essentially, you decide what quant, what verbal score, and the logic behind or the reasoning behind a target quant and a target verbal score that you should aim for. Now, once you do that, you learn concepts. Now, there are a good number of books that teach you concepts really well. The problem really is very few of them give you feedback on how well you've learned concepts. That burden of validation of learning is completely on you as a student. Then let's go towards application of concepts. Now, this is one area where books don't excel. Just the very structure of books doesn't lend them very well to teaching how to apply concepts. Consequently, a lot of people who study using books end up practicing hundreds and hundreds of questions, and that's the only way that they can master their application. Very few actually end up doing that. Then the last piece, to evaluate your extent of mastery, that's something that a lot of people who follow books do by taking mocks, and again the analysis of that mock test, that entire onus is completely on the student himself. A private tutoring based approach works slightly differently. Starting with the study plans, a private tutor works with you to create a study plan. That study plan is architected around your strengths, and then it makes sure that it allocates enough time to improve on your weakness. Then a private tutor teaches you concepts, and while he or she is teaching you concepts, the person gives you feedback to make sure that you know where you're lacking so that you can improve on it. A private tutor also teaches you how to apply those concepts, and he tells you while solving a problem, what do you do in step 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. And while teaching, a private tutor constantly evaluates you and only allows you to move from one topic to the other once you've reached that level of mastery. So, what are the key differences between these approaches? While you're learning the same content, a private tutor based approach is a lot more personalized and it focuses on teaching application to a much greater degree. Let's see, why do we say that most prep companies are more around this book-based architecture, whereas e-GMAT is based around this private tutoring-based architecture. We're going to take a case study for a student who wants to go from a score of 600 to a score of 720. Again, if you want to get to a 700 or a 750, the same principles would apply. So if you're an e-GMAT student, the first thing that we make you choose is a path towards your goal, and we build tools that allow you to do that. Now, there are two contrasting ways to approach a 720 score. One is what we call as a verbal driven approach, where you first focus on excelling on verbal and then you improve your quant score enough. The second is a quant driven approach, where you make sure that you maximize your quant score. And we never go to Q51, we always limit it to Q50, and then you really see how much you need to improve on verbal. Let's take the case of a student who takes a quant-driven approach. Again, there are multiple study plans that we provide. We also have a module which is called Your Study Plan, in which we coach you on how to doing that. Now that you've chosen a Q50 and a V38, we then really ask you to put a stake in the ground to really say, how are you going to approach a Q50 and how are you going to get to a V38? So let's say the student decides that he's very good in arithmetic, or evaluates himself and figures out that he or she is very good in arithmetic and chooses to excel in arithmetic and then do really well in algebra and geometry. That's one of the ways to get to a Q50. And then on the verbal side, the student decides that he wants to get to he wants to excel in sentence correction, do really good in critical reasoning, and then just do slightly above average in reading comprehension. Now, how do you get all of these permutations and combinations? We've built a tool called GMAT Planner that is built on a neural network that does all of that. The data that you saw on the prior slide was from GMAT Planner. Here's the screenshot of GMAT Planner that shows just that. So when you do this, here is what your journey towards that 730 becomes. It's not a black box in which you're studying. It's a set of 5 neat milestones. You can be very certain that if you hit those milestones, you will actually hit that 720 score, because essentially that's what that 720 score is composed of. So your journey in sentence correction is from starting from that 50 percentile to that 90 percentile, or in reading comprehension starting from that 40 percentile to 58 percentile. In fact, we have tools that measure your starting point as well. So this is how we help you plan. Let's now look at how we teach you concepts. Remember, a private tutor teaches you concepts and gives feedback to you on the extent of your learning. The e-GMAT technology platform is designed to do just the same. Here's one of our sentence correction modules, which is the subject verb module. What you'd really see is there are a bunch of video lessons over here. Let me just move. Okay. Now, each video lesson is a 15 to 20 minute video lesson and it has a quiz at the end. This quiz gives you feedback on the quality of learning that you've actually attained in this video lesson. If you do less than 80%, we ask you to revise the portions that where you still lack that learning prowess. This feedback is personalized to you. When you compare this to another popular online course by Magoosh, what you really see is you just see lessons over here. There's no feedback. Essentially, when you look at this looks a lot more like a book. Another thing that you notice is that for subject verb, it's not as comprehensive. Over here, we start with verbs. It's not related to subject verbs, and then we start with pronouns over here. Then let's go on application of concepts. Now, a private tutor teaches you what you do in step 1, what you do in step 2, what you do in step 3. At e-GMAT, we came up with an innovation called an application file in which we do just that. Then we evaluate you on your ability to apply, and then towards the end, we also give you an official guide quiz in which you can apply this, in which we give you selected questions which primarily test subject verb. So you can test your ability to apply not just on e-GMAT questions, but also on official questions. And this is how every module, and we have upwards of 100 modules, is structured in our platform. Now let's look at the Magoosh course again, and what you really see is there is no application file, there's just one quiz over here. Now there's no score that's given because again the intent is not to give you feedback, the intent is just to make you practice. Now 5 questions on subject, verb, verbs and pronouns in my opinion are too few. Now let's talk about evaluation of mastery, and while looking at evaluation of mastery, it's also important to understand why is this important. The reason why it's important is because your goal is not to just learn subject verb or just learn sentence correction. Your goal is to make sure that you hit that 90 percentile level. We built a tool called Scholaranium which evaluates. It has ability quizzes and sentence correction, and it has drill down analytics that tell you the areas that you need to focus on. For example, for this particular student, he needs to focus on comparison to get his SC ability to 85 to 90 percentile. So again, when you get this data, improving from where you currently are to where you want to be becomes fairly easy. So what are the two differences in these two approaches? While you learn the same concept, it's very clear that why the private tutor-based approach leads to much higher success in a shorter amount of time. Now, who's built all this content? 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 instructors have built this content. Instructors have been reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the people score 720 or higher, a good percentage of them use e-GMAT. We actually are starting our last batch of the year just today. We start a batch every 15 days or so. This is what a typical batch looks like. You can download the batch calendars over here. We would be starting our next batch on 12th of January. So for those of you who are looking to study in the end of this year, this would be a perfect opportunity to get in. With that, I've come to the end of my introduction. If you want to connect with some of our former students and stay updated with all things e-GMAT, feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn. You'll see upward of actually close to 9,500 students right now. You'd also be able to read upwards of 50 articles. We actually publish 3 to 4 articles every week on an MBA admissions and how to ace the GMAT. With that, I'd like to invite Payal to take over and start the second part of this webinar. I want to thank you very much for being with me for the first part of the webinar. Payal, over to you now.
Thank you, Rajat. Welcome everyone to Sentence Correction webinar. I hope you all can hear me clearly. So let me just do a quick voice check. All right, if you all could press yes, if you can hear me clearly. There you go. All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's get right into it. So what we are going to do in this webinar is, in this part of the webinar, is that first we're going to discuss what is your current approach to sentence correction. It's very important for us to understand how is it that we are doing things today before we figure out if the way we are doing things today is indeed the right way or if there needs to be certain changes made to that. So we're going to discuss that first. Then we're going to discuss what is really important to a sentence correction. What are the skills that you are required to build in order to reach that 90 percentile ability in sentence correction? And once we do that, we are then going to put together a plan of action for all of you so that you yourself can go ahead and ace sentence correction. So let's get to the first question here. That is, what is your current approach towards sentence correction? For that, we're going to ask you two very simple questions, and then we're going to discuss the responses to those two questions. Okay. So here is the first question, and as you read the question on the screen, I'm going to bring about the poll that you can fill in to answer. All right, so in your opinion, which of the following is the most critical to master in order to ace sentence correction? Okay, let's get a few more responses going here. And please put in your responses in the poll over here and not in the Q&A pod as some of you are doing. All right, sounds good. Let's broadcast the results here. So about 66%, 67% of the class strongly believes that understanding the meaning of the sentence is the most important thing, which is in order to master sentence correction. All right. Now let's go to our next question. So about 67% of the class, let's keep that number in our mind. Now, when you do solve an SC question, how do you split your time? So read all the three statements very carefully. So you spend equal amount of time, that is choice number one, amongst all the choices. Now choice number two is that you eliminate some wrong answers first, and then you equally split your time in evaluating the remaining choices. And then choice number three is that you spend more than half of your time in analyzing choice A. Let's get a few more responses going here. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So 74% of the class has selected choice number two. That is, you eliminate some wrong answers in the first go, and then you equally split your time in evaluating the remaining choices. Only 21% of the class has selected choice three. And this is a very big indicator of how you are approaching sentence correction today. In my opinion, you know that meaning is important, but you don't know how to implement meaning in your approach. And this is very evident from the responses that you have given to these two questions. The first question that I asked really was to figure out, what do you think is important? Okay, so it's really in your perspective what is important. The second question that I asked was actually the practical implementation of that. Yes, you know that something is important, but do you actually practice that? For example, I know that yes, workout is really important, or eating healthy is very important. I know that. But in my day-to-day life, do I practice that? Right? And the answer to that question would come from the actual thing that I do. Do I exercise every day? Do I eat healthy food every day? What do I cut out? Do I eat sugars and whatnot? Okay. So really, question number two is telling you the practical application of what you feel is important, and the very fact that majority of you, 74% of the class, selected choice number two for second question, that you equally distribute your time amongst all the choices, that you're not able to reject in the first go, indicates that you are not able to apply the meaning-based approach into practice. If you were to employ meaning-based approach in practice, then you would not equally distribute your time. You would have selected choice number three, which is that you would spend most of your time on choice A. And that's precisely what we're going to learn in this session. Why is that why is that the right approach? So for that, first we have to understand what is the role of meaning in sentence correction. Then we need to understand why is it that we should spend majority of our time on choice A, because yes, for majority of you that appears to be counterintuitive. You have 5 choices, then why should I give choice A disproportionately more amount of time? And that is precisely what we're going to discuss here. Okay. Now, we will also discuss how would this meaning-based approach play into the timing aspect, because you would question, you have 5 choices. If I've spent majority of my time on just one choice, how does that do justice to the remaining 4 choices? We are going to talk about that. And then towards the end, as I indicated, we are going to give you a plan of action so that you can get to that 90 percentile ability. Now, I want to ask one question. How many of you have just started? Actually, let me ask you this. And pardon me as I put together percent completion SC. So I want to understand how much of the core or where do you think you are in terms of SC preparation? So almost done. Just started. According to you, where do you think you are in your completion of sentence correction? I'm not talking about just the e-GMAT course. I'm just saying in general, where do you think you are at? Let's get a few more responses going, because that would tell me where, what part of preparation you're at and what kind of change in strategy you would need to implement in order to fix your strategy. All right, so let's broadcast the results here. All right, so let me look at this. So about 70% of the class is done, is less than 50%, has not done, is not more than 50% done. That is good. Okay. Again, not to say people who are almost done with their preparation, if you feel confident about your preparation, well and good, but definitely you should, let's figure out. So basically, I want to set the expectation right from this webinar. People who are who feel that they are more than 75% done with with their SC preparation, you guys should take inputs from this session as to how you are doing from the standpoint of, are you able to answer questions in the right amount of time, in applying the right strategy? Okay, so definitely look at that. So towards the end of this webinar, I am going to ask you, I'm going to ask questions from these two segments who are almost done, more than 75% done, as to how many questions you were able to answer correctly, and the other segment who's less than 50% done, how many questions were you able to answer correctly. Frankly, for the people who are less than 50% done with their SC prep according to their estimate, I don't care about how many questions you get correct. What I care about is that, do you understand how to apply the process to solve SC? Or first of all, do you understand what is the right strategy towards SC? Okay, so I'm glad that 70% of the class falls in that chunk. The remaining 30%, definitely you need to focus on your accuracy in this webinar, and then take it from there. Okay, because again, the course correction strategy is also very much pertinent to you guys in case that is required for you. Okay, now this webinar is not going to have uber difficult questions. We are going to progress in the from easy questions to the most difficult questions. So we are going to solve 4 questions in this session. Again, the point of this session is really to tell you the right approach towards SC. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, let's proceed with this. Now, I usually do not time any of you in this webinar, but I'm going to change that in this session, because I really want to see that if you apply your current process, right, how well are you able to solve questions? So I'm going to do that this time around, and I'm going to give certain amount of time for each of the 4 questions that I have. Okay, so because that's going to give you a good estimate of where you're at in terms of your strategy towards SC. Okay, now, so I'm going to show you the first question. It's a very easy question, so I'm going to give you about 45 seconds for that question. Okay, all right. But let me ask you one question here. I haven't gotten any subjective feedback from you all till now. So how are you all doing? Does what we're going to do in this session make sense to you? The agenda is clear before we get into cranking these questions? All right, very good. So let's get going here. So here's the first question. Okay, before I bring up the pod for the first question, so just give me 1 second here. Can you all please click on still solving? I took the question screen away, so if you can all please click on still solving. All right. Now I'm going to show you the question. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. All right, so about 110 students have selected choice D as the correct answer, which indeed is the correct answer. So let's quickly go through this question. So again, the point of this question is just to tell you, as I said, it's a very easy question. But what this question exemplifies is that how you can create, using similar context, how you can change the meaning of the sentence. So let's look at that. What the original sentence is telling us is that Samuel has decided to allocate more time for his GMAT prep, even though he getting additional responsibilities at work. So what it's saying is that even though he's getting additional responsibilities at work, he has decided to spend more time on the GMAT. And you can understand that why the author believes there is a contrast here. The contrast is really that, when you get more additional responsibilities at work, you actually kind of reduce the amount of time that you spend on something else, right? But in this case, Sam is doing exactly the opposite. He's spending more time on the GMAT while getting additional responsibility. At the same time, he's getting additional responsibilities at work, and that's a conscious decision that he has made, right? So there is that contrast here, right? And we all can very well understand the context, because the context is very much what we experience in our day-to-day lives, right? Now, when you take a look at the answer choices here, choice B. Now, choice A. Why is choice A wrong? Let me ask you this. None of you, I believe one person selected choice A. Why is choice A wrong? There is no verb. Absolutely right. Even though there is no verb here. Absolutely right. Now, let's look at choice B. Why is choice B wrong? Okay, now this is where things start to get interesting. Almost no one selected choice B. However, if you take a look at the reasons that you are presenting, the reasons are not actually, all the reasons presented are not correct. The main reason why choice B is incorrect is that there is no longer a contrast that the author has presented. Grammatically, and let me ask you this question, how many of you feel that grammatically this sentence is incorrect? Choice B. How many of you feel that grammatically choice B is incorrect? Okay. So 78% of the class thinks that grammatically this sentence is correct. And that is indeed correct. There is nothing wrong with this sentence from grammatical standpoint. The reason why choice B is wrong is not because there is a semicolon, not because there is no connecting word, not because it is in past tense. all this is saying is that there is a difference in meaning. Okay, this choice changes the meaning of the sentence. Now, simply, the author has simply presented two facts. The first fact is that Samuel has decided to allocate more time. The second fact is that he got additional responsibilities at work. The author has not connected those two facts. And that is what is wrong with choice B, because according to the original sentence, according to the original context provided by the author explicitly stated a contrast, right? However, in choice B, he's no longer stated that contrast. And that is why choice B is wrong. Grammatically, there is nothing wrong with choice B. Okay. Let's look at choice C. Choice C is incorrect because there is a change in meaning. Okay. The intended meaning has been completely distorted. What he's saying is Samuel has decided to allocate more time when he gets additional responsibilities at work. Now, logically, also I can kind of sense that there is an issue with this, but let's say Samuel did decide that, right? What he said is that as soon as I start getting more responsibilities at work, I will allocate more time to my GMAT prep. And from grammar standpoint, there is nothing wrong. But that is not what the author intended to indicate. And that is why choice C is wrong. Okay. Choice D is absolutely correct. And if you notice in choice D, the author has removed the whole need to use a verb. So he's changed the structure of the sentence. Now he's saying, despite getting additional responsibilities at work. So there is a sentence structure change, but that sentence structure change retains the intended meaning of the sentence and it's grammatically correct. Okay. Choice E. Why is choice E incorrect? Absolutely right. It's not a causal thing. There is no contrast here. So again, there is nothing wrong in choice E from grammar perspective. What's wrong in choice E is that it changes the intended meaning of the sentence. Okay. Now, what is it that you can take away? This is a very simple sentence. As I said earlier, it's a very simple sentence. For multiple reasons. First of all, the sentence structure is very easy. Secondly, the context of the sentence is something that we can very well associate with, right? So we didn't really have to struggle to figure out what the meaning of the sentence is, right? But what is it that stands out in this sentence, in this question to you? Why do you think I included this question? And I want you to take a look at choices B, choices B, E, and A. What is it that you can take away from here? Right, to understand what is the author's intended meaning. That is very, very important. Okay. You need to spend importance of choice A. You need to spend more time on choice A so that you can understand the intended meaning of the author. And this is the reason why you cannot distribute your time equally amongst the answer choices. That is not the right approach. You have to spend disproportionately more amount of time on choice A because that is where you understand what the author intends to communicate. Because till the time you cannot understand that, you will not be able to select the correct choice that communicates that meaning in the grammatically correct form. Okay? So everyone with me on this? All right. So now, essentially, if you think about it, there were three choices that distorted the meaning but get the grammar structure intact, right? So what this question tells you another thing, that meaning can be distorted in multiple ways, and you need to be cognizant of that. And for that, you need to be cognizant. You need to have a very solid understanding of what the original sentence communicates. Okay. So let's now look at the same thing in action on an official question. And now again, this official question is also easy. We are not really going into difficult questions just yet. And this official question is actually slightly modified version. The question that you see next is a slightly modified version of the official question, but very slight. All right, so let's go through the same drill. I'm going to show you the question poll. Let's select still solving here. All right, and here is your question. I'm going to end the poll now. All right. So I give you about a minute and 15 seconds for this question, or slightly more than that. And for those of, so what I observed is, for those of you who selected, the correct choice here is choice B, okay? And for people to select choice B, it didn't take much time at all. In about 40 seconds, I saw that a number of you had selected choice B. It was after the 40 seconds that you started to, students who marked the answer after 40 seconds actually started selecting other choices, which to me is a very solid indication of the fact that you weren't able, you were struggling to find the correct answer, which means that you were not really able to apply the process that we've just talked about, right? So let's look at what is it that you should have understood from the original sentence, and how is it that you should have taken that information into context to solve to select the correct answer. All right, so let's go through that. So the first and the foremost thing that I always do whenever I see any any sentence correction question, or for that matter, any sentence, is that I read the question in a very structured manner. By that, what I mean is that I break the sentence down into smaller chunks so that I can understand what the author intends to communicate. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over here, and in the process I may ask you a few questions so that you can also help me understand the meaning of this sentence. Okay, so feel free to put in your answers in these two polls as I ask them. So next month, state wildlife officials are scheduled to take over the job of increasing the wolf population. So I'm going to stop here at wolf population because I want to first understand what the author has said till now. Essentially, this sentence, according to this sentence, there's something that's going to happen next month. What is going to happen? There are certain officials who will take over certain job. What is that job? That job is to increase the wolf population. Okay. Now I read further. In the federally designated recovery area. So essentially, what this is telling me is that they're going to take up this job in a certain designated area. Okay. So all right. Basically they need to increase the wolf population in this designated area. Okay. Let me ask you one question here. When I clicked on this arrow, or when I annotated on the screen, were you still able to see the text on the screen? Okay, so let me know when you have a problem in seeing the text on the screen, because I've seen that happen a couple of times in this webinar today. So I just want to make sure that I'm not annotating and the screen and the text is disappearing then. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so their job is to increase the wolf population in this designated area. Good. The number of which will, however, ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. Now, this is where things start to become very interesting. The number of which, now what does this refer to? Whose number is the author talking about? Yes, the number of wolves. Absolutely right. Now, did everyone get that part? Did everyone understand that the author is talking about the number of wolves when he mentions the number of which? Okay, good. All right, the number of which will, however, ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. What does that mean? What is the author saying here? The wolf population will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. What does the author mean from this? Availability of food, absolutely right. More, so it depends on how much food the wolves have. So the wolf population depends on the amount of food that is available. Absolutely right. Now, why has the author used the word however? Absolutely right. The officials don't have the influence, right? Now, how many of you understood this contrast? Essentially, the contrast simply is that wolf population would depend upon the amount of food that's available. So really, the state officials don't have any influence on it. So even though they may take up the job, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so you guys did understand the intended meaning. Good. So that's what the intended meaning is. Okay. So essentially, next month, some officials will be responsible for a specified job. What is the job? To increase the wolf population in this specified area. But there is a contrast here. And what is the contrast? That number of prey would dictate the number of wolves. So really, state officials don't have much to do. Now, what is wrong with this sentence? What are the errors that is there something wrong with the word which? And if yes, what is it? What is wrong with the word which here? Explain to me what the error is. What is which pointing to? You tell me, if which is pointing to the wolf, is that wrong? So which, according to the meaning, which refers to wolf, is that wrong? Logically, it's not wrong, but is it wrong? Yes, grammatically that's wrong. Why is that? Because, so again, what we are doing over here is we know from the meaning of the sentence that which refers to wolf. That is what we know for sure, which cannot refer to anything else according to the logical context, right? But when we take a look at it from grammar standpoint, we look at how the word wolf has been used. What is the role of how has the word wolf been used over here? Wolf population. Wolf has been used as an adjective. Absolutely right. Okay. Wolf has been used as an adjective, and which is a pronoun. So a pronoun cannot be used to refer to an adjective. Okay. So that's why this choice is wrong. Which refers to the wolf. Grammatically, wolf cannot be referred to by the pronoun which, because wolf is not a noun. Okay. So this is a simple concept that you need to know. Now, a number of you also said that which is a relative pronoun, so it refers to area. In this sentence, so that is wrong. Okay, that connection, that statement is incorrect. That which is a relative pronoun, and it's referring to area. No, in this case, which has not been used as a relative pronoun. Which has been used as a regular pronoun, which can refer to any entity, any noun entity in the sentence. Okay, so that is a conceptual understanding that you need to have. But look at how we applied this grammatical concept. We first understood, we all had a very clear idea about the fact that which needs to refer to wolf from logical perspective, right? And then we thought about, okay, is that usage correct in this sentence from grammar standpoint? And we recognize, no, that is not correct. So that is the first error that we have in this sentence. Okay. In fact, that's the only error that we have in this sentence. So the main point over here is that you need to have that meaning-based focus to understand what is the role of each entity in the sentence. And then you also need to have that conceptual clarity of what roles can a particular entity act, or can the particular entity play that role in the sentence. Okay, so that is how we marry meaning with grammar when we solve sentence correction questions. Okay, I have a question in the Q&A pod. Why is wolf not a noun? In this sentence, wolf is not a noun because it's been used as wolf population. What is it saying? It's saying it is describing population, increasing the population. Whose population? Wolf population. Okay, so it's describing the word population. So again, this question itself exemplifies the need for us to focus on the roles played by each and every entity in the sentence. Okay? Okay, so now let's carry on with our answer choice analysis. Okay? Uh, let's look at choice number 2. The size of population, however, will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. Now, in this choice, the author has removed the whole need for using a pronoun. The author is now explicitly stating the size of the population. Now, what does the population refer to? It refers to the wolf population without any ambiguity. Okay. The size of the population, however, will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. There is nothing wrong in this sentence. So choice B is the correct choice. Let's look at choice C. When, however, the number of wolves will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. Now, look at choice C. What has happened in choice C? What's happening in choice C? The grammatical error has been removed because the author has now changed which into wolves, right? So there is no issue of the pronoun usage. But the whole point of when, that has actually changed. That actually distorts the meaning. Okay. When, however, the number of wolves will be dictated, will ultimately be dictated. So the timing relationship doesn't really make sense. Okay. Okay. Now I have a question here. Why is the semicolon okay? Now if you look at this, there in choice B, so I'm guessing you are asking about choice B. So in choice B, what you're saying is that however the size of population will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. So really, however has started an independent clause. Yes, it appears after the the subject of this clause, but it is, if you restructure it, you're basically saying however the size of the population will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. So this is a separate clause here which needs to be connected with a semicolon. Okay, so that is why semicolon is absolutely correct. All right, now in choice C, when, however, the number of wolves, in choice C you have when that is connecting the two sentences. Okay, however is simply being used to present a contrast. It's simply being used to connect. It's not being used to connect the two clauses. It's simply there to communicate the meaning of contrast. Okay, now let's take a look at, so why is choice C wrong? Choice C is wrong because it changes the whole intended meaning. It distorts it. The timing of it doesn't really make sense. It's almost saying that they were scheduled to take this job. That's right when the number of wolves will actually be dictated by the number of prey, which doesn't make any logical sense. Let's take a look at choice D. The number of which, again, choice D has the same pronoun error, so you can simply reject it. Choice E, but the size of the population ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. So here, first of all, the verb form is incorrect. Secondly, you have this connection issue as well over here. Whenever you use the word but, you need to connect it with a comma and not with a semicolon. Semicolon will not work with but. Absolutely right. Okay. So if you think about it, in this sentence, there's quite a bit of grammar happening in the answer choices, right? But if you think about it very clearly, if you understand the intended meaning of the sentence, rejecting incorrect answer choices becomes really very straightforward. Okay. Would you agree with that? That if you understand the intended meaning, when you take a look at the answer choices, rejecting those answer choices that are playing on the meaning aspect becomes really very easy. You don't have to focus on those small errors on in the answer choices. Okay. The other thing is, if because you understand the meaning so very well, you can now understand the grammar errors as well. Okay, you can understand the grammatical aspect of the errors as well because you understand meaning so very well. Because after all, you are utilizing your knowledge of English grammar to understand the meaning that the author communicates, to understand the constructions that the author uses. Okay. Now, I have a comment here. Sometimes the meaning of the first answer choice is ambiguous. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Sometimes the meaning of the original choice is ambiguous. But in those cases, as we're going to see in the next question that we take up, what you have to do is you have to put the pieces of the sentence together. The author will always give you, will in most of the cases, and I would say 95% of the cases, will give you everything that you need to know in order to infer the correct meaning, infer the intended meaning from the elements that he gives you in choice A. You would seldom need to simply go through the answer choices to understand what the intended meaning of the author is. Okay, so even in the cases when the answer choice, when the first answer choice, choice A, is ambiguous, you can infer the intended meaning if you apply the meaning based approach, and we're going to see that in the next question. Okay, all right, so let's proceed. Essentially, I mean, what I want you to understand is that if you understand the meaning of the original sentence, you will be able to reject answer choices very easily, even those answer choices that do not have glaring grammatical errors. Okay. And I want to bring up this story of a student who really benefited tremendously on this focus on meaning. Now, because before using meaning-based approach, Nishant struggled to finish verbal section on time. This was despite knowing all the grammar stuff. Okay. But once Nishant embraced the meaning-based approach, he realized that he was naturally able to solve sentence correction questions with high accuracy in 45 seconds or fewer. Nishant was admitted to Ohio Fisher with full fellowship, even though he applied very late in process, almost in round 3. And the reason that I absolutely love this story is because here is a guy who was stuck at 570 and was wondering whether he would ever be able to get into a B school. And in the end, with all his hard work, with the right approach, he was not only able to get into a B school that is highly ranked in operations management, but was also able to secure a full fellowship. Okay, so what I want you to understand is I see some of you putting in comments in the Q&A pod saying, basically a couple of you saying that I solved this question by just focusing on the word size and number. That's fine if you were able to solve this question, but really think about it. If you had not understood the meaning of the sentence, would you have been able to solve this question with the confidence that you were able to? Secondly, this is an easy question, as I said. The more you embrace the meaning-based approach, the more you would be able to, with more ease, you would be able to solve difficult questions. Ultimately, your performance on the GMAT needs to show what your ability is. And what is your ability? Your ability to solve difficult questions. Ability in what? Ability in solving difficult questions. Not an ability of solving as many questions as you can, but your ability in solving the difficult questions correctly. And how can you get to difficult questions? By solving easy and medium questions first. Right, so again, you have to get the right approach. Yes, first in some questions you might get lucky because the answer choices are not that close, because the question is itself easy, and you may be able to simply do an elimination technique and select the correct answer, right? But just understand the amount of clarity that you would have if you apply this meaning based approach, and that is something that I want the non-believers in this webinar to think about. Right, ultimately it's your MBA dream that is at stake, right? So why would you not utilize logic, which comes so naturally to us? Why would you rely upon elimination techniques or just knowing all those grammar rules that you really don't need to worry about? right? If you focus on logic, you don't really need to worry about all those nuances in grammar, because really that's not what GMAT is there to test you on. GMAT is really to test you on in terms of how much you can understand the content. Okay. Okay, so let's now proceed to our next story here. Actually, this one is continuation of Nishant's story. Basically, he's written this amazing debrief on GMAT Club, and in just 1 week, this became the most appreciated success story of 2018. So I would really want you to go and read through this, because you really understand how he imbibed and learned the various core skills to improve from V27, that's 40 percentile, in verbal, to V41, 94 percentile. Okay. And what's interesting is if you download his ESR, you would notice that he scored 94 percentile in SC, and that was the highest amongst any sections. Okay. Now, one more success story before we go into our next question. This is a success story of an individual who sets very high standards for herself. Samia works at McKinsey. She's been a topper all her life, yet she struggled to get to that 760. She really struggled with sentence correction. She just could not figure out why in some SC questions certain answer choices were incorrect and how to arrive at the correct choice in a definitive manner. That is, the definitive manner is the key for you guys to think about. Because of her score, because of this problem, her score was stuck in the low 700s. She realized that she needed to look at SC in a completely different light. It was then that she discovered the focus on meaning through this very webinar. And once Samia enhanced her approach, she realized that she could get to the correct answer in a definitive manner by focusing on meaning. It is this confidence that propped her score up to 780 with a better than 99 percentile on GMAT verbal. So again, you change your focus a little bit towards the intended meaning, okay, and you start to see the magic happen. Obviously, you will need to put in all the hard work, and we're going to talk about that when we put together your plan. So with all this motivation, I hope you would be able to solve the next question that we have using the right process. I don't care if you get the right answer or not, but I want you to do that effort, to make that effort in reading the original choice, first understanding all that the original choice has to offer, and only then moving on to the answer choices. Okay. So are we all ready? Just want to understand the pulse of the class. Where are you guys at right now? Excited to solve the questions, getting to understand the meaning-based approach, or you're like, yeah, this is just another one of those things. I'll see if that works for me. Okay, good. I'm excited to see that you are excited to solve the question. So let me bring about the poll for question number 3, and we'll go through the same drill. Let's click on still solving before I show you the question. So everyone, please click on still solving. Good. I can see the enthusiasm by just how many people are clicking on this. So good. Thank you for that. All right. So here you go. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to end the poll. All right. So, tell me your experience with this question. First of all, were you able to apply the approach? And I'm going to, were you able to apply the meaning-based approach? How many of you were? Let me ask it over here. How many of you were? Oh, I like to see that. Yes, it was a lifesaver. Nice. All right. Um, okay. Now, this is a difficult question. It's a 700 level question. And about 40% of the class got this question correct. The correct answer is choice B. And I'm going to repeat the same. I had the same observation here as well. And I do want to tell you that because I want you to understand that if you get the question, if you get the meaning, you get to the correct answer a lot quicker. And that's evident in how people were selecting choice B. People who selected choice B selected it. The first, the people who responded to this question first selected choice B. Then people who took more time were selecting other choices because they were getting confused in what the other choices are communicating. Okay, so now so essentially the thing is if you do apply the right process, you will be able to get to the correct answer in a more sure shot manner. Now let's look at choice A and we're going to solve this question using our step-by-step method. Okay, so first and the foremost, we're going to understand the meaning of this sentence. Now you tell me what is the meaning of this sentence at a very high level. I want you to first tell me. What is the meaning that you understood from this sentence at a very high level? Just take 30 seconds, write down one sentence to summarize the meaning that this sentence communicates. You don't have to put in the details, but just tell me what you think. All right, very good. So I'm going to read a few. Use of music in films, that is a little general, not very specific. Because a type of music invokes certain feelings, it is used often in certain stuff. That's absolutely right. Describe diegetic music and its use by filmmakers. That is correct, but by putting it the way you've put it, you haven't really highlighted the causality that is presented in the sentence or that is intended by the author to be presented. Okay. Diegetic music invokes sense of verisimilitude, so filmmakers use it. Yes, absolutely right. Meaning was hard to understand, but logical understanding helped. Okay. Okay, so some of you have put in the correct meaning. Because something is true, filmmakers use it. Okay, good, good. X music has some effects, so filmmakers use it. Absolutely right. Okay, all right. So some of you have gotten the meaning. Now, how many of you were not able to get the meaning that we just talked about at a high level? And it's absolutely fine to not be able to do that. So just a few of you weren't. Okay, that's fine. So let's go through it and I'm going to walk you through the process that I use to read sentences. Okay. Because diegetic music, now I'm going to pause here. Why am I pausing here? Because there's a comma here and comma is a natural pause point in any sentence. Okay. Because diegetic music, so this sentence is presenting a cause and effect. How do I know that? Because of the word because. Diegetic music, it's a certain kind of music, so I'm going to shorten it up as DM. Okay, because DM actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. What is the role played by this entity? Actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. It's a modifier that it's describing diegetic music. What is it talking about? What is it telling about diegetic music? That it's actively used in the film, and it's not simply put in the background. Okay, so that's about it, right? So it's just describing diegetic music. And look what I've done. I've actually paused at this other comma, and I'm just understanding the role played by this long entity. Okay, so I know that this is a descriptor of diegetic music. Now, why is this important? It's important because if my if this chunk of sentence is underlined, then I know that the author may be able to institute errors by having this modifier refer to something else. So I need to know what is the role played by this long descriptor, so that if I see the author change this construction, I can catch him right away in his act. Okay, and that's the beauty of reading the sentence in this manner, of breaking the sentence down into these logical pieces of information. Okay, invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Now, invoking a sense of verisimilitude, then I see another comma, so I pause here. So now I take a look at this part. Now, invoking a sense of verisimilitude, what would it talk about? What do you think it talks about? It talks about DM. It's another descriptor of DM, right? It invoking a sense of verisimilitude. So, okay, it kind of sounds a bit odd, but I know that, okay, this thing is describing diegetic music, and it's basically saying that diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Now, the construction may seem a bit odd, but maybe the construction makes sense as I read further. Okay. Now, verisimilitude as a term is something that I don't really know of, but the author explains this term later on in the sentence. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. I see a comma, I actually pause here. So the author has now explained the term verisimilitude. What is verisimilitude? It's the idea that art can actually represent reality, the truthful version of reality. Filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Now, how many of you felt that the author jumped from talking about diegetic music to now mentioning filmmakers? How many of you felt that when you read the sentence the first time? Yes, and it's absolutely fine for you to feel that way, because that is what the author indeed did. The author has not done a good job of doing a smooth transition to some other entity. Okay, and that is a solid enough indication that there is something quite wrong with this sentence. Okay, so I want you to trust your meaning, trust your instincts when it comes to understanding the meaning of the sentence. And when you find that there is something not flowing very well, that should be an indication that the author has messed up here. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is, instead of relying on grammar rules to guide you that there is something wrong in the sentence, rely on your logical sense to guide you to see that there is something not quite right with the sentence. Okay, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that grammar is not important, but what I'm saying is, while you're reading the sentence to understand its intended meaning, keep this thought in your mind that when there is something not quite right in the sentence, it would act like a speed bump. Okay, and you need to make a note of that. All right. Now, filmmakers creating, but at the same time, when you see that speed bump, get over that and understand what comes next. Give it your due diligence to understand what comes next. Okay, which means that yes, filmmakers was a bit of a jump, but I am going to see what the author is talking about regarding filmmakers. Okay, filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Okay, so now the author is saying that filmmakers who create these period dramas use it often. What is it here? What is it here? It is diegetic music. Absolutely right. So again, we understood the reference of it from the logical sense that the author has implied here, right? He's talking about diegetic music. He's saying that filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Now, we are not saying that it can refer to any preceding noun. It can refer to reality. It can refer to verisimilitude. It can refer to art. No, we know that the author is talking about diegetic music. It makes logical sense to say that filmmakers who create period dramas use it often, that use diegetic music often. Okay, so that's about it. Essentially, what I know from this sentence is it's about diegetic music. It basically indicates that it gives a reference, it provides some descriptive information, then it talks about a verisimilitude, and then it says that there are certain filmmakers who basically use diegetic music often. But the problem here is now that you've read the entire sentence, now that you know the roles played by each and every entity in the sentence, and which is absolutely, absolutely important, regardless of how much the sentence is underlined, even if simply a single word is underlined, you need to absolutely read the entire sentence to understand what is the author's intended meaning. Okay, I have a question in the Q&A pod that says sometimes reading the entire sentence is not required to answer a question. That's absolutely wrong. No, you need to always read the entire sentence to answer the question. Now, yes, for some easy questions, you may be able to get by simply quickly browsing through the answer choices. But remember what I said earlier. You are here in this webinar so that you can get to your dream score of 700 or above. 700, 720, 750, 760, right? You are not here to simply get by solving some questions. Okay, you need to build your ability to answer difficult questions, and if you have to answer difficult questions, you have to concentrate on the meaning. Okay, and forget about timing for now. As I said earlier, I am going to address the issue of timing later on in this webinar. Okay. All right. So in this session, in this statement, the author has simply the author we know wanted to present a causality, right? But I don't know what the effect is. Okay, I really don't know what the effect of the effect is. I even don't know what the cause is because the author has not written the sentence in the correct manner. Okay, and I also know that the author has talked about filmmakers, but I don't know how does that link back to DM. So what I do is I now link the two things together. The meaning of this sentence is not clear. That's a given. And this is one of those cases wherein the author has not done a good job in putting together a sentence. Okay. But if you look at it, I've understood each and every part of this sentence. Okay. So what I have to do is before I even take a look at the answer choices, I need to infer the logical meaning. How many of you do that today? How many of you infer logical meanings from the sentence that doesn't present meaning correctly? Okay, so quite a few of you do. Good. And that's precisely what we're going to do now. Essentially, what the author is saying is that because diegetic music does a certain action, filmmakers who create period dramas use it often, and that makes perfect sense. The reason why this sentence was not clear, was not communicating the correct meaning is because of this word invoking. As soon as I change this word invoking into an action, the entire sentence starts to make sense. Okay, and how was I able to figure that out so easily? Because I simply I didn't focus on each and every word individually. I focused on the parts of the sentence. This is one part, second part, third part, fourth part, and fifth part. This sentence is not composed of 40 some words. This sentence is composed of 5 parts. And all I have to do is now put together these 5 parts into the puzzle and finish up my puzzle. Does this make sense? The minute you start thinking about a sentence, not in terms of the words, but in terms of the individual parts, break one sentence down into 5 or 4 or 3, how many ever logical parts there are, that's when things start to become really, really straightforward. Okay? All right, so now I know that invoking needs to be invokes. And frankly, step number 2 in which I figure out the errors in the sentence becomes almost a non-existent step because I've already done that job when I was understanding the meaning of the sentence. And that's the beauty of this process. Okay, so now I take a look at my answer choices. Choice B is the correct answer. Now look at choice B. How will you compare choices A and B in terms of their construction, in terms of their structure? Now, I'm not talking about the error that choice B has corrected. I'm asking you to compare the construction of the two sentences. They're both well structured. Yes, there is an error in choice A, but look at how in choice B, the author has moved the pieces of the puzzle. In choice B, actively referenced in the film has now been put at the beginning of the sentence, right? Uh, is often used, diegetic music is often used by filmmakers. The filmmaker's part in choice A was towards the end. The author has now put that right next to the initial element. It's now placed at number 2. Okay, so the author has moved things around in choice B. Yet choice B makes perfect sense. So he has moved things around and he has corrected the error of choice A. Okay. Now, if you were not applying the process properly, if you were not focusing on choice A to the extent that we have focused on, you would have looked at choice B and your mind would have gone, oh my God, am I reading a brand new sentence now? How many of you feel that when you see completely underlined sentences and the author moves around the pieces of the puzzle? How many of you feel bogged down by that? And that will not happen if you focus on the meaning of choice A, if you look at the elements of the sentence the way we have looked at. Okay? So, choice B is absolutely correct. Let's look at choice C. Choice C, and let me bring about the poll as well so that I can tell you how many students marked these different choices. Choice C was marked by about 17% of the class. So choice B was selected by about 40% of the class. Choice C was marked by about 17% of the class. Now, why is choice B wrong? Choice B is wrong because it doesn't make sense. First of all, tell me, choice B, is there anything wrong with it grammatically? There's nothing wrong with it grammatically, but it is wrong because it doesn't make sense. What it's saying is, because diegetic music is actively referenced in the film, I'm talking about choice C, sorry, I'm talking about choice C. Choice C, there is nothing wrong with it grammatically. Okay, so now, yeah, I'm talking about choice C. Choice C is absolutely correct from grammar standpoint, but logically it doesn't make any sense because what it's saying is that people use diegetic music, filmmakers use diegetic music because because of how it is used in the film and not because of what it can communicate. So choice C communicates an illogical meaning, and that's why it's incorrect. Okay. Choice D, it's the same issue that the cause does not make sense. And there is a grammatical error because verb for filmmakers is missing. Okay. Choice E is wrong. Why is choice E wrong? Because there is no causality now. The author is simply presenting two facts. There is no causality. Nothing wrong from meaning perspective as it communicates logical meaning, but it doesn't communicate the meaning that the author intended to communicate, which was to show the causality. Okay. All right, I have a question in the Q&A pod. How can we conclude that option A is always the true intended meaning of the author? That is how sentence correction questions are created. Choice A is if you read the description of sentence correction questions in the official guide, you would see that the test maker clearly indicates that you need to communicate the meaning communicated by choice A. That is why choice A is what it is. You are given an original sentence. Original sentence utilizes choice A. That is why choice A is always correct. Okay? Now, what have you learned from this question? Good. Break the question into parts. Play of words. Pay more time on original sentence. Meaning is the king. Good. Importance of understanding the meaning. Break into parts and understand the meaning. Good. Very nice. Now tell me one thing. Before doing these questions or before this webinar, did you have this level of understanding or clarity of what meaning actually leads to or how to implement the meaning into your strategy? Okay, good. I'm glad to see that there is that huge improvement in what you now perceive of meaning and how meaning needs to be implemented. Good. All right. So really in this sentence, meaning of the sentence original choice was not clear, but we understood each and every part and we inferred the meaning. This is a very, very critical part. Okay. Error analysis step was almost non-existent because we did such a thorough job in understanding the meaning. And then we analyzed each choice and rejected each incorrect choice on solid grounds. And if you notice, we didn't really spend that much time in understanding the different answer choices, right? And you can see the implementation of that philosophy that we have, that you need to spend majority of your time on choice A. You can see that being implemented in these questions. Okay. So again, the thing over here is that another thing is that we spoke very little about grammar rules. Okay, we focused on meaning and logic, and that is not to say that grammar is not important. Okay, grammar is important because grammar is a tool to communicate meaning. Okay, but it is a means to the end. Okay, where I have the problem is, or where students falter, is that they start to think that the grammar itself is the end. No, the end is communicating the meaning. So I don't want you guys to let grammar become the end. Okay, you need to learn grammar rules. Absolutely right. You have to know grammar rules because you need to know how English language is used to express the meaning. But the key thing is your ultimate goal is to understand the meaning. And this brings me to why people falter in SC. And I want you to think through this and see if this scenario resonates with you. What happens is that you don't spend sufficient time on choice A to understand the meaning, which means that you don't have a solid basis of finding the correct answer. So you start looking at choices to find clues. Okay, you do significant back and forth among choices. And how are you relying on the answer choices to find clues? You look at similarities and dissimilarities, right? And then you go back and you figure out, okay, if this is the split that the author has used, then maybe there is something in the original choice to tell me which split is correct. Okay, so you're using hints and then you're going back to the answer choice. So you do a lot of back and forth. You get confused and you end up making mistakes that could very well have been avoided. How many of you can associate with this thought process? Almost all of you. And you can see that how this thought process can be completely removed if you follow the meaning-based approach, if you focus on the original choice the way we focus on original choice. And this brings me to what is the optimum approach for SC, and this is really just me summarizing all that we have done till now. Okay, what we have to do is step number 1 always has to be on choice A. You read the original sentence to understand the meaning. You understand the roles played by each entity. In your mind, the analysis of the sentence should be that instead of reading words or instead of reading just one sentence, you are now in your mind, you're splitting that sentence into logical thoughts and you're looking at that. Okay. In step 2, you identify major errors in choice A. I'm not talking about small little errors like comma or semicolon or whatnot, just major errors. Okay, this becomes really easy once you understand the meaning. Then you analyze each choice in the light of analysis that was done on choice A. That's very important. You're not reading each choice as if it's a brand new choice. You're reading each choice based on what you already know from choice A. And that is why, because steps 1 and 2 are done completely on choice A, and because step number 3 has to be done in the light of what you do on choice A, That is why we say that you need to spend about 60% of your time that you spend on any SC question on choice A. Okay. Now, how do you get to 45 to 60 seconds per question in SC? Okay. There are two things for that. Okay. One is that you need to know how to read a sentence. And if you notice very carefully, I read the sentence slowly and I paused appropriately. Okay. Secondly, you need to have that good knowledge of variety of sentence structures. Okay. So let's talk about the first one. How is it that you should read a sentence? What's the effective way to read a sentence? That's something which we teach in our Master Comprehension course. In this course, you will learn how to read the sentence so that you understand the meaning in the first read itself. And that's very, very important. Okay, how do you read? How do you break the sentence down? Today you saw me read 3 sentences. The first sentence was really easy. So I'll focus on question sentences 2 and 3. You noticed how I was pausing at specific pause points, how I was assimilating the meaning. Okay, that's something that we teach in Master Comprehension course. Next, you really need to master grammar. Okay, you need to know all the grammar rules. That is very, very important. And you need to know how to apply them. Not, you just don't need to know the grammar rules, you need to know how to apply them. And more often than not, people don't focus on the application part. That is another reason why people falter. Okay. So essentially, you need to know things such as how do pronouns work, what are acceptable uses of verb ing as different parts of speech, when do you use like, when do you use as, what are logical parallel lists, and whatnot. Okay, and then you need to stitch it all together to see that, okay, how do I apply my understanding of, let's say, verb ing modifiers on questions? Okay. So these are the two very different things that you need to know in order to be able to solve SC questions in under 1 minute. Okay, now we'll go into a detailed plan that builds upon these things after we solve this last question of this session. Okay, so we'll try our hand on this next question. Now, this question is a little different from the other questions in that it is partially underlined. Now, I know some of you, how many of you feel right now in this webinar that this meaning-based approach you should definitely apply on completely underlined sentences, but on partially underlined sentences you can get by it? How many of you feel that? So about half of the class feels that way. Okay, less than half of the class. Okay. All right. For those of you who do feel that way, I don't want you to do that. I want you to have a single process, whether it's that you can apply on any sentence, regardless of what length of sentence is underlined. And the reason for that is simple. What the intended meaning of the sentence is not simply communicated by the part that's underlined. The intended meaning of the sentence is communicated by the entire sentence. So regardless of what's underlined or what's not underlined, you have to read the entire sentence in step 1 when you are trying to understand the meaning of the sentence. So don't fall into that trap that you can simply look at the partially underlined portion, just the underlined portion, and get by it. No. Okay, so that's my input to you for this particular question. And let me bring about the poll for this question. Let's click on still solving. All right, here's your question. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so you guys, I gave you upwards of 2.5 minutes for this question. But after about 1 minute and 15 seconds, I could see that people are just hovering, either selecting choice C or selecting choice D. And some of you were changing your responses. And what that tells me is that, yes, you were able, again, I'm not sure if you got the entire sentence absolutely correctly, but because it took you a bit of time to get to the correct, to get to at least selecting a particular choice, that tells me that you struggled with understanding the meaning of this sentence. Is that right? How many of you felt that you weren't able to understand the meaning of this sentence? Not bad. All right. So, but how many? So tell me about your ability to solve this question by applying the process. How was that? Or your comfort level. I wouldn't call it ability, but your comfort level in solving this question. Okay, good. Better than what it was before. All right, good. Okay, all right, good. Once I understood clearly, I was able to solve. Meaning-based approach didn't help. Okay, 80% didn't help much as meaning was clearly understood, but to select a correct choice was hard. Okay, so thank you for that honest feedback. So we'll look into this and see how that can be addressed. Not sure about the grammar rules for the efficiently cover. Okay, that is fine. We will look at that. Meaning process helped me to figure it out better than what it was. Then I think I'm rereading the responses now. Okay, better was comfortable. All right, good. So let's go through this question in the same manner. Delivery drones. So the sentence is about delivery drones. We're going to shorten it up as DD. Unlike conventional modes of transport. Now this part is simply presenting a comparison. Okay, it's simply saying that DDs are different from our conventional modes of transportation. Ship goods without becoming carbon intensive. Now this part over here is talking about an action of DD, that they ship goods, and then without becoming carbon intensive is simply describing the action, that they ship goods, how, without becoming carbon intensive. Then with their abilities to run on batteries, this part over here is presenting a characteristic that explains why DD do not become carbon intensive. Okay, so they DD ship goods without becoming carbon intensive with their ability to run on batteries. Now, because they can run on batteries, that's the reason why they don't become carbon intensive. Efficiently covering short distances. Now, this part is giving me the result of the preceding sentence, of the preceding action. What it's saying is because it's able to ship goods, it is able to efficiently cover short distances. Okay. However, their inability to cover long distances. Now there is a contrast here. However, now we knew about a positive aspect before this. So after this, because there's a contrast, the author is going to present a negative aspect. However, their inability to cover long distances, because they are not able to cover long distances, their popularity in transportation industry, their inability to cover long distances may hinder their popularity in the transportation industry. Because they are not able to cover long distances, that's why their popularity may be limited. Okay, so really there are two facts presented. Both are contrasting facts. First one is that a positive feature of DD, there is less carbon footprint, they are efficient for short distances. Fact two is because they cannot cover long distances, they may not get popular. How many of you got this level of understanding of the sentence? Okay, good. Now, if you notice one thing, even though a small part of the sentence was underlined, we analyze the entire sentence in step 1. However, in step 2, what we'll do is we will pay more attention to the underlined portion. Again, we are not going to lose sight of the non-underlined portion, but because we know that there's going to be an error in the non-underlined portion, and because we have understood the meaning of the entire sentence, we will pay more attention to simply the underlined portion. By that, what I mean is I'm not going to look at delivery drones, ship goods. I'm not really, for example, over here. However, their inability to cover long distances, this is one entire clause. I'm not going to worry about the subject verb pairs in this clause. I'm not going to worry about the pronouns used in this clause because I know that there's not going to be an issue here. So my field of review now is limited to simply is restricted to just the underlined portion. Okay, but that's only after I've understood the entire sentence properly. So unlike so now I need to focus on this. So what I see over here is very straightforward. Without becoming carbon intensive is modifying ship. So that's absolutely fine. Now with their ability to run on batteries, this is something which is a little bit weird. Why? Because this is explaining why they don't become carbon intensive. Okay, so we need to use appropriate expression. So that's about it. There is nothing else that's wrong over here. Efficiently covering short distances. This is a verb ing modifier that can very well present result of the preceding clause, and that's what it does over here. So this part is absolutely fine. So now I move on to the answer choices. Okay, so let's do that. So choice A is wrong, as we discussed. Choice B is wrong because running on batteries, something that was the reason, is now becoming a result, and that's not correct. Okay, so you're playing with the words over here, changing the way this particular expression has been used, or the role played by this expression has been changed now. Let's look at choice C. Ship goods without becoming carbon intensive because they run on batteries and thus efficiently cover. So here the error in choice A has been corrected. Now you're using an alternate expression to present the result, and that's absolutely correct. You're saying does cover. So that's absolutely fine. Now choice D is wrong for 2 reasons. First of all, can ship goods, and based on your responses over here, there was a tie between choices C and D. So D is wrong. People who selected choice D, you need to be very careful about subtle usage of little small words such as can. This word has changed the meaning completely. What this is saying, according to the original sentence, we said that the author said DD ship goods. That's a fact. DD ship goods. Okay. What this choice is saying is DD can ship goods. There is a big difference. Okay. Tom solves SC questions in under a minute. Okay, that's a fact. Tom does that. Tom can solve SC questions in under a minute. That simply says that he has the ability. Now, whether he actually does that or not, that's a different thing. Okay, so that's the difference. There's a very big meaning difference between the two. Okay. Secondly, to efficiently cover, another small word that distorts the meaning completely. Okay. What it's saying is that they run on batteries to efficiently cover short distances. So it was an intent. The intent of having them run on battery was to have them efficiently cover short distances, but that's not what the original sentence indicates. The original sentence indicates that they run on batteries, and by the way, that leads them to efficiently covering short distances. Okay, so these two, so choice D is grammatically correct, but it changes the meaning of the sentence in 2 different ways. That's why choice D is wrong. Now again, you should have been able to, if you weren't able to figure this out, that means that you weren't able to get the meaning of the sentence to the same level of clarity that we were able to get to. Okay, and that's a feedback for those of you who've selected choice D, that you have to get to that level of precision so that you can eliminate choices such as choice D. Okay, Last choice, not anyone, no one selected that. May ship goods. Again, it's not the matter of possibility, and plus due to is wrong, covering is wrong. Okay. So again, summarizing, even though entire sentence was underlined, if a partial sentence was underlined, we reviewed the entire sentence. Then, we looked at our learnings from step 1 and 2 and then applied those, our findings from steps 1 and 2 and applied those on step 3. Okay. So again, focus on understanding the meaning, spend more than 60% of your time on choice A, understand roles played by each entity. Okay. Grammar is just the means to the end being understanding the meaning. I know that I'm talking about this, I'm reiterating myself, but that's really important because I want these things to be imprinted in your mind. Only then you'll be able to apply this to the level of precision that we want you to, or that you need to in order to get to that 90 percentile ability. And this brings us to the plan that you need so that you can get to that 90 percentile ability. First of all, do you guys understand the whole meaning-based approach and why it works for SC? Because till the time you're not bought into that, you will not be that amenable to listening about the plan that we have for you. All right, yes or no? All right, good. So let's talk about the plan. Now there are 3 facets to this. The first thing, as we had discussed earlier, how to read effectively. That's very important. Okay, that's something which you learn from master comprehension course. Point number 2, you need to master all the grammar rules. That's something which you learn from the e-GMAT SC course. Number 3, you need to evaluate yourself and you need to iterate. That's something that you'll do with Scholaranium. So if you notice, these are the 3 pillars of 3 different things that you need to do in order to master SC. And you have these 3 different tools or 3 different specialized tools for each of these purposes. Okay, and that's what I'm going to explain to you as to how you can use these 3 tools in the e-GMAT course so that you can get to 90 percentile ability in SC. Okay. How to read effectively. As I said, master comprehension teaches you how to read such sentences. We start with the building blocks of a sentence and then we go on to explain how to form long sentences. This helps you easily reconstruct and understand the purpose of each part when you see a long sentence in that choice A. We teach you how someone takes a short sentence and converts that short sentence into a long sentence. Okay, and then you can apply that same philosophy to deconstruct the long sentence that you are bound to see in a typical SC question. Okay. Now you then go on to fine-tune those skills in the pause points module. When reading a long sentence, we teach you where to pause and make sure that you spend your time efficiently in comprehending. We call these strategic points as pause points. Today in this webinar, you saw me pause at certain times, at certain points. Right? We'll teach you where all to pause so that you can identify those pause points on your own. And frankly, this is not a trick. We're simply teaching you how long sentences are constructed. And it's not just impactful for non-natives, that is people who have not studied in the US, Canada, and Australia. It also helps natives become more purposeful readers. Marcos, who's a native speaker, benefited immensely from master comprehension. Since he's a native speaker, he was able to understand most of GMAT SC sentences. Okay. However, due to the extremely formal nature of the language, comprehending what he read took a lot of time. Now, once he went through the SC course, he understood the role played by each snippet of a sentence, experiencing an amazing improvement in his reading speed. Now, this had a huge impact on both his SC and his RC ability. Okay, so again, don't ignore master comprehension course. That is the basic foundation of your course, and you need to go through that with the right spirit so that you understand how these long sentences are constructed and how is it that you can understand the meaning from these long sentences. Now, how do you get to 90 percentile ability? Let's talk about that. Let's continue with that. Now that you know how to read, let's see how can you learn the concepts, how can you learn those grammar rules and their corresponding application. So we'll move on to see how the e-GMAT SC course personalizes this learning for you. One thing that I want you to understand is learning any skill is not a linear thing. It's not that you do A, B, C and you're done. No. You cannot get to that 90 percentile ability by just studying. You need to focus on perfecting. Okay, that's something that I want you to understand. It is an iterative process. Now, how do you apply that iterative process, or what tools do you need to be able to do this iteration is something which I'm going to explain to you next. Okay, so our students achieve perfection by using these three pillars of the e-GMAT course offering. Process, that's the first pillar. This is where your conceptual learning and your application piece takes place. We've spent upwards of 40,000 hours, which is the same as 20 man-hours, perfecting this, making sure that we teach you every concept in a crisp and precise manner, and that our approach is consistent and works on every question. We don't have things like that if you see this pattern of question, then you apply this process, or if you see that kind of question, you apply this process. No, we have a simple, straightforward philosophy, meaning-based approach. That is the only way to solve SC questions in an effective manner, okay, and efficient manner, okay. Now, just teaching these approaches is not enough. We ensure that students actually learn, and this is where the feedback that we provide comes in. We have built this special technology in our video files to make sure that these files provide feedback with every concept file and every application file. So you get feedback every 25 minutes. Okay, through ability quizzes, we recommend that you take ability quizzes every 30 hours so that you get that feedback of how much you've improved in the 30 hours that you've spent. How advanced is this technology? Even though our competitors have a few video files, none of them provide this kind of feedback. And I'm talking about companies such as Kaplan, Veritas, Manhattan, companies that have the resources to do so. And why have they not done that? Because they don't believe in personalization through technology. They would rather sell you private tutoring at $200 or upwards per hour. Now, your course comes with 10 SC ability quizzes, each of which give you a precise estimate of your percentile score. Now, let's talk about personalization. As I mentioned earlier, no one gets to 90 percentile in the first go. To get there, you need to isolate and focus on areas that need effort, and you need to relentlessly improve on those. Essentially, every student carves his or her own unique journey to ace the GMAT. And that's where the insights from skill data in Scholaranium, which outline where to focus your energy on, and our custom quiz engine comes in. Okay. Now on the next slide, in the next few slides, I'm going to demonstrate how the SC course is built upon these three pillars. So I'm going to take an example of verbs module. Okay. Now I'm focusing just on one module, but I just want you to understand that there are 10 such modules in the e-GMAT SC course, and all those modules are built on the same principles. Okay. The first and the foremost thing that you do whenever you look at a particular module is that you see you would notice that there are the comprehensiveness of the modules. Okay. Now, this module is going to give you feedback that is personalized to you. Look at the first three files. These first three files teach you the foundation concepts in verbs and tenses, and that's something that you need to build upon, because you need to know why is simple tense used, why is future perfect tense used, and whatnot. Okay. Now, each file has specialized quizzes that evaluate you on your conceptual knowledge. Okay. Very similar to what a private tutor would do. Okay, the private tutor would teach you a particular concept, test you on that concept, and only then move on to the next concept, and then test you on on that next concept. That is something which we have built into our course. Okay, all these quizzes are scored so that you get insights on how well you have understood that very concept. And this feedback is for you, it is personalized to you. Now, once you learn these concepts, we teach you how to apply the concepts in application file 1 and then in OG quizzes. Again, over here also, we evaluate your ability to apply and we give you feedback that is personalized to you. We continue this personalization in the next few files. Then we teach you the next set of concepts, and the same process repeats with the evaluation and the personalized feedback that is given to you at every step. Now, this feedback that you get every 15 minutes of your learning makes learning 5 times more impactful than simply learning from books, and much more effective than learning from other video courses that do not provide this feedback at all. Okay, now what I'm going to tell you is that how do you use this feedback and how does this empower you to get to that 90 percentile ability? So we are talking about just the verbs module right now. And I want you to focus on this very carefully because people don't usually know how to utilize data and draw inferences from it. Okay, because they're not used to seeing that in the training modules that are provided to them. So let's look at this. Now, this student scored really poorly in practice quiz. He scored 60%. Now, what is causing this low score? These insights are right there on the dashboard that you see on the screen. Okay, look at some of the scores over here. Tell me which files would you focus on to figure out why he faltered in the practice quiz, in the final practice quiz. Look at the data very carefully. So if you notice over here, 67%. He got in verb sequencing, he got 67%. Yes, I'm starting to see the responses now. Absolutely right. So this student did not really learn how verbs actually need to be sequenced, as indicated by the 67% score there. Then this student was not able to apply very well because he scored only 50% in the application file. And then in the advanced concept of conditional verb, he again faltered. So it's no surprise that this student did not score 90 percentile in the verbs module. And also it's very clear how the student can improve his performance tremendously by just focusing his energy on these 3 activities, all in about 1 hour of additional effort. So I just want you to take a moment and understand the power of data that is captured regarding your performance as you are going through the course, and how you can utilize this data to tell you to basically carve the path that you have that you need in order to get to that 90 percentile ability. Okay. By focusing on these, the students can improve from 60 percentile ability to 90 percentile, all in verb tenses, all in about an hour. Okay, people who care about getting to 90 percentile now have a sure shot way of getting there. They don't have to spend, weeks after weeks and then take a mock test to figure out that they haven't improved. You spend 1 hour on the platform, you get feedback instantly as to how well you did, and then you get the corrective action as well. At this point, let me talk about Ria. Ria thought that her SC was very good, but she faltered in SC big time in her first attempt. And then she purchased Verbal online and did the SC course very diligently. She looked at her data in the course dashboard and in Scholarium, and she focused selectively on certain areas and was finally able to score 99 percentile in SC. This is one of the many examples of students who go from nowhere to acing GMAT SC, as well as other sections on the GMAT. While their starting points are different, they take different times to prepare, but the thing that is common amongst everyone is that they apply the methods that are taught in the course and they leverage the data to isolate areas of weakness, and they work on fixing those weaknesses. To end, I'm going to just say this. I understand that putting effort to ace the GMAT requires sacrifices, but it's these sacrifices that take us to that next level in our life, just as they did for Nishant, or for Mansi, or for Samya, or for Ria. And to summarize, I hope that it's clear that you can't just get to 90 percentile by only studying. You need to focus on perfecting. And that's where the data comes into picture. All right then, so this brings me to the end of the second part of the webinar. And as I invite Rajat back into this session, I want to understand from you as to what's your take on everything that we did today? I kind of feel that you are all a little spellbound or you're tired. I'm not sure what the case is, but I kind of feel that you're just a little quiet. Either you're absorbing all the information. I hope that is what it is. So I'd like to hear from you as to understand as to what you got from this session, how much you enjoyed it, or where you're at in terms of what you feel about your take on SC. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of concepts in SC as compared to other verbal topics, and that's really because you need to understand the grammar. Right? You need to understand the grammar you need to learn the ropes of English language, very simply speaking. Contemplating Harvard, that's really good. I'm so happy to read that. I appreciate all your positive comments over here. That I'm glad that you could feel the willingness that I have in order to help you. So that's really good. But the thing is that it's very straight. If you simply have to change your approach a little bit. Okay, that's all you need to do. And believe me, this approach is much easier than that iterative approach of looking at the answer, going back and forth amongst the answer choices. Okay, and it's really learning in the right manner, utilizing the data to guide you as to how to prepare. That's something which a number of students don't really get. People really have that thing in their minds that they have to learn, they have to simply do learning, and then at the end of it do the testing, because frankly speaking, that's how we have been taught throughout our lives. You learn, and then at the end of a month or 2 months or even 5 months, you test in your exams. No, but that's not the right way. The right way is that you learn and you test right there, and then you get insights, and then you change your course of action according to the insights that you're getting. All right. So thank you very much for your feedback, and I'll be as you type your questions in the Q&A pod, I'm going to be inviting Rajat back into the session so that he can take your questions, and really all the very best for your GMAT preparation. And I am glad that you were able to benefit from it, and you will be able to apply the meaning-based approach now. And again, it's going to take some time for this meaning-based approach to settle in. Okay. I have a question here. How much of idioms do we need to memorize? You don't need to memorize the idioms. Just look at the idioms that have been covered in our course, and that's about it. You don't really need to go through go through those nuanced stuff. No. That's not what GMAT is there for. GMAT is one of the very, very logically put together exams. I really love the way GMAT GMAT questions are constructed. If you focus on logic, there's nothing stopping you from acing the GMAT. Yes, the recording of this session is going to be available. We are going to send the recording in another couple of hours. after the session in your email. All right, so give me just a couple of, so I'll be mute for a couple of minutes while I invite Rajat back into the webinar, and then he's going to be able to answer, he will answer the questions that you guys are putting into the Q&A pod. Thank you very much. All the very best, but just stay put and continue putting your questions in the Q&A pod.
Guys, we are now in the last part of the webinar. Thank you very much for the feedback and your comments. They really help us a lot. Let me actually share the presentation with you. Also, the batch calendars are here. Remember, we started both our quant and verbal batches today. How much time to cover all the FC modules? About 45 hours. If you are someone who's starting at 20 percentile, if you're someone who's starting at, let's say, 50 percentile, then it's about 30 to 35. Full verbal, again, it depends on what you're starting at. So yeah, if you write to us, we can tell you an estimate. I mean, I'll tell you high-level estimates. So if you're starting at 30 percentile in verbal and you want to get to 80 percentile, you're looking at about 110 hours overall. If you're someone who's starting at 60 percentile, you're looking for 90 percentile, you're looking at about 45 to 50 hours. So remember, you don't get any brownie points to finish the course. You get brownie points to ace the GMAT, and that's how our time estimates are devised. Let me just give you some study plans, which will give you estimates on that. Take a look at these study plans over here. How much is for the paid class? We have multiple plans. We have plans for verbal, for quant, for GMAT. If you go on our website, look at plans and pricing, you can get that. Excuse me. Are the classes time bound? Yes, you can download the batch calendars. You can really see when the classes start and end, and we start a batch every 15 days. If you still have questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com, or you can write to pile@e-gmat.com. How do you decide whether you want to go for verbal online or verbal live? It's a good question. It's a question that a lot of people ask. Fundamentally, there are three differences between the two courses. The first is the onus of effort on you. With verbal live, we push you to finish the course in a sort. So when you buy any course from us, you get subscription for 6 months. Okay, but with verbal live, when you're following a batch, we push you to finish that course during that time. If you've not done the prerequisites before every session, then we evaluate you on those, and we really ask you why you haven't done. So you don't just become answerable to us, you also become answerable to all the other batchmates that you have who actually do the prerequisites. So holding you accountable is one thing. The second thing really is where you work with a live instructor, and the live instructor actually corrects your approach. The live instructor will figure out why you're going wrong in a live session. So I tell people, say, if you like the interactivity that you got in this webinar, you're going to love the paid sessions, because the amount of interactivity that you have is 3 to 4 times as much. So, so essentially, that's the second piece. You get feedback on why you're going wrong, where you're going wrong from a live person, and then because the feedback's given by a live person, it actually and it's real time. It in my opinion, it actually does has a much bigger impact. The third piece which it does is additional support. So our instructors do stay back after the class, and if you have questions which are in general about your verbal strategy or some doubts that you still have, the instructors do provide that feedback. And a small thing is our live courses come with a score improvement guarantee if you're a retaker, but that's not the reason why you want to take the course, because more than 99% of our students improve by that guarantee, and it's the best guarantee in the industry. But again, the first three reasons is why you want to go for a live course. The other piece which you have to ask yourself is, hey, do you want to learn from some of the top instructors in the world? And if the answer to that is yes, then I think live course is what you should go for. Either way, you can start with live and downgrade to online, or start with online and upgrade to live. It's something that we allow our students to do. How much for SC class? We don't sell just the SC class. We either sell, at a bare minimum, we sell the verbal course. Ishan says, I take the exam in 4 days. Uh, how do I change my current approach, which gets me most questions right, to meaning-based approach? I would say if your exam in 4 days and if you're getting most questions right, then don't bother changing it. You're just too close to the test. How does a 4 point score improvement guarantee work? Essentially, you take the test, and if you have a prior score report, you just give that score report to us. You finish the course, and if you've not improved to the required amount, which is 4 points from your current score, we refund your money. We make this guarantees all the way up to a V41, which is 94 percentile. So if your starting score is V37, we guarantee a V41. If your starting score is V38, V39, V40, we still guarantee 3 points on a scale of 60. So someone who starts at a V40, which is 91 percentile, still is guaranteed a V43. How do you crack scholarships? Okay, we have some data on that. Let me get you some data on. Take a look at this. Uh, this article. Also, let me get you some other stuff which can help you. Some more data on scholarship. Okay, hold on. So Ishan says, I've heard a lot about your verbal course. What about your quant course? Ishan, short answer, attend the quant session tomorrow. Long answer, take a look at the free trial. Even longer answer, yeah, yes, we're very famous for verbal, but what a lot of people don't really know is that essentially, even on the quant side, e-GMAT courses are the most reviewed courses. So again, but the best way to do it is do your own valuation. Take a look at the free trial, attend a free session, and you'd get to know what a quant is. Um, Let me also Here's a guy who improved from Q38 to Q50, using our Quant course. So take a look at that. Can you buy just the SC course? No, we don't sell the SC course. We sell the entire verbal course. When will the recording be available? The recording will be available in about 10 hours or so. Anand says, I usually struggle in SC questions. I have my GMAT in 2 days. The kind of SC questions that I struggle with are those where uh, uh, where you have 3 or 4 clauses. What advice would you do? When you get those SC questions, follow the sentence structure approach. Read the question stem slowly. And when you do that, you should be able to spot the answers. The moment you spot the answer, look at the answer choice that fixes the answer. Don't So the wrong thing to do would be to look at answer choices without spotting the answer. Ishan says, I really need help with speed on verbal and quant. Can you help with that? Ishan, so first of all, most people mess up on the GMAT because they don't have the right process, not because of speed. I have enough data to prove to you that even if you don't bother about the last 8 questions on both quant and verbal, you can still get a 720 fairly easily if you just focus on the first 8. Trying to prove that timing is not what limits most people. When I say most, I'm talking about 95% of the students out there. So my guess really is you're not limited by timing. You're limited by your ability to solve difficult questions. A lot of people think, I feel short on time towards the exam, so timing must be limiting me. Yes, you may find yourself pressed for time towards the end, but even if you had that time, your score wouldn't have been that very different. By the last block on the GMAT, your score is 90+% decided. So so essentially, focus on building ability. And the way to focus on building ability is to follow the process. And as you follow the process, evaluate how much time you're going to taking at each step. And as you evaluate, you can fix that. There are a ton of students who have done that. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for for joining this session today. Akansh GMAT says, if I attempt the starting questions correctly and couldn't get the time to solve the last few questions, would I still be able to get um, a good score? You would still be, but remember this, a lot of people think they're going to spend a lot of time on the first few questions and they'll get them right. Just spending time on the first few questions doesn't mean that you would get them right. If you don't have the ability, you can spend hours on a question, you still won't get it right. So make sure you build the ability. But yes, if you answer the first, I'm just saying, 25 questions on verbal correctly, you'd still get a V40 if you mark the rest randomly. But by the time you reach that 25th question, what it really means is you should have solved a good number of 700 plus level questions. And without having that ability, you won't be able to do that. And if you have that ability, then you won't fall short on time. Again, that's kind of what I'm trying to really say is don't stop worrying about timing when it comes to the GMAT. And you'd hear me say that, you'd hear very few GMAT experts say that, because most experts really try and sell their courses and their products and their services on saying, we're going to teach you tricks. Tricks don't work on the GMAT. GMAT is designed to evaluate your logical thinking ability, not your quick thinking ability. No. Good managers make good decisions, and that's why the GMAT is designed. In fact, one of the things that very few people know is GMAT is the only exam that is where GMAT, which is the body that hosts the exam, is owned by business schools. So whereas when you look at GRE, when you look at SAT, when you look at the CAT, which is an equivalent in India, their ownership doesn't reside in the same way with business schools as is the case with GMAT. So the sole goal of GMAT is to empower individuals who would likely to be good managers. It's not a test of speed, it's not a test of grammar, it's not a test of vocabulary, it's a test of your ability to think logically. Pratyush says, if you miss any class, can you attend it in the next session? Absolutely. As I said, you get access for 6 months. We start a batch every 15 days. If you join the current batch and you say, hey, I'm unable to continue it, you're welcome to start the next batch. You don't pay anything extra or the batch after that. HD recordings, what are those? Those are recordings of the live session. So there are some people who, for example, could be maybe oil and gas professionals or may work in merchant navy, and those are people who really say, hey, I have 30 days, I want to study full time, I want to finish both quant and verbal. So for those people, they attend half the classes live, they really watch the recordings of the other half, and we honor the guarantee as long as you watch the content, so you don't have to attend the sessions live. Also, if for any reason you miss a session, you can watch the recordings. So, and the recordings are all in high definition. Ishan says, how many questions can I get incorrect to get a V38 to V40? Again, it's not the right question to ask on the GMAT because it's a computer adaptive test. I can tell you, you can get 10 questions, 10 to 11 questions wrong and still get a V38. At the same time, I can give you tests where people have gotten 5 questions wrong and they have a V35. It's a computer adaptive test. It depends on where you get those questions wrong, or more precisely, what's the difficulty level of questions that you get wrong. So don't worry about. And again, if you attended one of my strategy sessions, and I had one last week, you will have. I show a lot of data where two students, their attempts look almost identical. One gets a 65 percentile, the other gets a 97 percentile. The difference really is the difficulty level of the questions that they get wrong. GMAT doesn't look at accuracies, GMAT measures abilities. Okay. All right, last question is, having 4 years of work ethic must for getting into a B school? Not really. Most B schools look for a bare minimum of 3 years. So 4 is not a must. And in fact, even in those 3 years, what they look for is the quality of work experience. Some people work for 2 years, they work in startups, they have really good work experience, and they're good enough for B schools. Others have 10 years of work experience, but all they've done in those 10 years is support, and over there, even those 10 years is not worth as much. It's not the number of years, it's the quality that you do during those years. Is the online and live course different? I think that's a very open-ended question. So short answer is no, they're not different. They're built by the same instructors, the same 4 out of top 5 instructors on GMAT Club. They teach the same methods. Um, they basically all cover the same concepts. In fact, the live course has the online course in it. So when you buy a live course, you get the online course along with it. And 85% of your time is spent on the online course. The other 15% is where the live instructors come in, and that's where the difference is, where you also get feedback from a live instructor. And again, when you get feedback from a live instructor, there are a few things a human can do that machine still can't do, which is figure out when you make a mistake, why you're making a mistake, and when you answer a question correctly, are you answering a question correctly for the right reasons? For example, in a critical reasoning question, when you make a mistake, we can figure out, were you able to identify what the main conclusion meant? In a reading comprehension question, we can really go right in real time and figure out, did you notice or a certain transition word, or did you miss out on it? And essentially we can give you that feedback, which is not as easy to give in self-paced learning environment. But essentially, we teach you how to look for keywords in both live and online courses. We teach you what are the main keywords that you need to look for, uh, which really talk about continuation of a thought process, or change in a thought process, or essentially go in an orthogonal space. Do we help with admission counseling? We don't directly help with admission counseling yet. We do have a lot of experience, and if you look at my LinkedIn, you'd really find people who have just given 20-25 minutes advice, and essentially they found it very useful. But we do work with admission consultants, the top admission consultants in the industry. We are a platinum sponsor of e-GMAT, which is an association for International Admissions Council. This is an organization that's essentially run by the Stacey Blackmans and the Linda Abrahams of the world, uh, and so we sponsor that. So we have good contacts with them, and we recommend our students to some of the top admission consultants out there, and they take good care of them. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It was a pleasure conducting this webinar. Remember, we have the Quant webinar tomorrow. Also, if you're looking to ace the GMAT, if you want scholarships and fellowships, do make sure that you get a score of 740 or higher. All right. Lastly, take a look at the free trial. If you like it, consider upgrading to the full course. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning.